Hi guys, in this tutorial we break down how to create a convincing running cycle in Anime Studio. Alright, so let's do a running animation in Anime Studio. A couple things before we begin. First, I recommend that you check out the advanced walking cycle animation tutorial for Anime Studio, as that will give you the basics of what we will be building off of here, and just give you some other ideas as to how you can move the character after you create the cycle and so forth. Secondly, there is a chart that is accompanied with this tutorial if you want to check that out. It sort of breaks things down and gives you an idea of how you can anticipate how to create steps for your running animation. And I have included that link in the YouTube descriptions box. So you can check that out if you wish, or you can just follow along with this tutorial and then try to apply the method to your own design based on your own discretion. So with that said, let's get started. So as you can see on screen, we have a character rigged up and ready to go. So we will be basically going from here to create the running cycle. So as you can see, when we take the Manipulate Bones tool here, we can just move the limbs around. Things look pretty good. You can see it's a basic rig, and there are no real surprises if you're used to the rigging process in Anime Studio. We've also color-coded the bones for the initial leg and arm. You can see we have a yellow color for the leg. We'll place a yellow color for the arm just by going up to Plane and then choosing orange or yellow. And you can just use the Select Bone tool to select that bone and then select that drop-down menu. This makes things easier when your bones overlap. The color-coded bones are the ones that are in front of the character, making things easier. So we'll first start by placing the extreme poses. So we'll go to frame 1 and we'll take the Rotate Bones tool and we're going to place down the extreme poses for this running animation. So we'll position the legs like so. And then we can come up here to the arms. And remember, the arms and legs run opposite of each other. So if your leg is forward on one side, it's going to be backward on the other side and so forth. So we'll come in here now and advance forward to about frame 13. And now we're going to basically create the exact opposite here of this. So in order to do this, we can enable onion skins, which gives us an idea of where the previous frames were so we can mimic those. So we'll turn outlines on and we can come over here now to frame 1 and click on the top of that timeline so we get a gray square or rectangle. Come over here to the character and we can see we now have outlines. So we want to match the limbs to be opposite of those outlines. So we're basically placing the leg that was in the back in the front position and vice versa. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but it gives you a really good idea of how you can position this stuff. So you can kind of create, what we'll be doing here is creating a looping animation. And it just makes things easier, so you know kind of where to position things. Especially when you get going into this, it can be kind of difficult. So now we will, as you can see, we can move this and we have stuff going on here. We'll also want to hit Control F to place keyframes down on all of the bone keyframes on the timeline. And then advance forward to frame 24, copy those keyframes, and then paste the keyframes onto frame 24 with Control C and then Control V or Command C and Command V if you're on a Mac. So now you can see we have an animation. It's pretty flat, pretty lifeless. We can do more. We will do more because we're incredible tutorials and we are, of course, incredible. So what we'll do from here now is start adding in some in-between animations. But first, we can color code the extreme animations just so it's easier to see what's going on when we are animating things and we don't get kind of lost here. We've found that labeling your extreme keyframes yellow stands out the best on the timeline, but you can choose any color you wish. So we're just going to highlight those, right-click, and then choose yellow from the label menu. So now That again just gives us a visual representation of the extreme poses as we start adding the in-between poses. So now, what we'll do next is add those in-between poses. So all we have to do now is go basically every other frame, starting with frame 3, and we're just going to start putting in the different poses. Now, we have the rotate bones tool still, and we're just going to come in here and start creating these poses. Now, when it comes to figuring out how you want to create these in-between poses, we're creating sort of a galloping animation here. Now, that might be kind of hard to judge if you've never done this before. And even if you have done it before, again, it might be kind of hard to judge. Now, ahead of time here, Jim, who has recorded this tutorial, has done this many times. And so he kind of knows where to position things for the in-between positions. We're going to go now to frame 5, and we're going to now tweak this some more and add in some more in-between changes here. But he's done this so much that he has a really good idea, and he has a good idea of character animation and so forth. So that chart I mentioned at the beginning of the lesson will be a good companion for this tutorial if you're looking to have more advice as to how you can place these positions down. And again, it's not required, but you can just follow along and try to mimic the best you can with this tutorial, but it's always kind of nice to have a chart like that to follow. And I believe, like anything in Anime Studio and animation, as you continue to work with this, you're going to get a better feel for it. I read a paragraph or a chapter in one of my old Flash books. It was called Cartooning in Flash 5, and it basically stated that creating a walking or running cycle is the hardest thing to do in animation. However, once you master it, you never forget it. And as you can see, Jim really knows how to place these positions down. And I believe if you follow this tutorial and continue to practice, you'll definitely get there. Just don't get discouraged. It can be easy to do so. You need just to keep practicing and you will eventually get it. So basically, with these in-between motions here, it's all about just placing things down and getting it so that we can transition then to those extreme poses so that we can put more spring and life into this. And after each keyframe, make sure that you hold in control and hit F to place keyframes on all of the bone channels. That way there's no floating bones. That's a good practice to have. And I should have probably mentioned that a little bit earlier, but as you can see, he just did it there. And we want to make sure that we have those keyframes set as we advance forward, because if you don't, as I said, things tend to float, and it's not really a attractive thing, and it can be kind of frustrating when you forget to put those keyframes down. So from here, we don't have to do a whole lot with this one. We can just kind of move things up just a tad here, bring the leg in, maybe bring that up a little bit more, and we'll bring the leg back just a little bit and adjust the bottom portion of the leg, and then we'll use Control F. Okay, so now as we can see, things are looking pretty good, and we kind of have like a galloping motion going on here, as I mentioned before, and that's kind of what happens when you run hard. That's kind of the motion we're creating here. So from here now, what we will do on the back end of these extreme poses is we're going to take advantage of the onion skinning, and we're basically going to replicate the movements from the previous in-between motions. So let's advance forward here to about frame 15. Just 1 second, go right about there. And we will click on then frame 3 for the onion skin, and then we can basically move the limbs so that they match up with that onion skin outline, basically like we did with the extreme motion. So we can just bring in the front leg like so, and then the back leg like that. And it's all about just trying to get it, again, as close as possible. And again, we're just worrying about the limbs right now. We'll get to the body. We'll be doing some things with the body here in a little while, as well as overall movement with the character. Just concentrate on the limbs right now. So we got that one matched up, and we're going to go now 2 more frames in, and we're going to turn that onion skin off and then turn on the onion skin for frame 5. Now again, it's all a matter of moving these limbs so that they match the outlines. You can see how this is looking so far. And we'll come in now. Again, we're on frame 17, onion skinning frame 5, and we can just get these matched up. We have a little collision with the bones there. Sometimes that happens. That's why we label our bones with the colors. It's easier to work with. And we can bring the arms then in as well. Now, you'll notice again that we have the front limbs color-coded, just the top bone for those limbs. However, you could color-code all your bones if you wanted to. It just depends on how you want to organize. So now, we will Control F and then go to frame 19, onion skin frame 7, and then repeat the process. The onion skinning makes this really simple and just makes it a lot easier, because now when you're onion skinning, of course, you're not matching it up correctly exactly, just like the other previous frames were. As you can see, some things are a little bit out of the outlines. But with animation, it's not so much about replicating everything exactly. You just want to create an illusion here so people, think something's happening. And if you can accomplish that, then that's good. So we're going to then advance forward to frame 21. And we're going to then onion skin frame 9. Same process, same repeat here. And it looks like we may have made a mistake here. We actually want this last extreme pose on frame 25, not 24. So we'll just drag that over to 25. And then we can move our limbs in and those in-betweens. That was just a mistake that we made earlier, and I apologize for that. But with Anime Studio, what's great about things is you can really move them around if you need to, so it's not the end of the world if something like that happens. Okay, so it looks like we're good with matching up there. Now for the last in-between pose, and make sure you Control F, we're going to go to frame 11 for the onion skin, and we are on frame 23 now for the actual pose, and we can bring the limbs in just like that. Okay, good to go. The arms just need to be adjusted just slightly, and we should be good from here. So now we can see how this kind of plays out. It's kind of playing it along here. And what we can do, just to get a better idea, is create a cycle for this. So we'll enter a value of 2 and then play this out. And you can see now what this looks like. And it's getting there. We have a lot going on here, and it's looking good. So now let's turn that cycle off. We can just right-click those and choose Smooth. And now we can do some other things here to just expand upon what we've started here with the animation. So first, what we will do is we will select the Translate Bone tool. And we're going to click on that backbone we have here for controlling the character. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to use this workspace line as our ground. Now, if you actually had ground in the animation, you'd use that. But we want to match the feet up here, basically for every single portion of this cycle. So we want to match the heel up with that line on frame 1. And we're basically going to have the feet collide with that line. So we go to frame 2, looks good. Frame 3, we're going to want to now hold in Shift and just move this down by clicking and holding. Now we'll go to frame 4. We can move that up a bit. And again, if you hold in Shift and then you move up, it'll prevent it from going horizontally. So that's a good way to do it. Now, as you can see, we're just cycling here every frame, and we're just going to come in here and make sure those feet, or 1 foot, I should say, touches that workspace line. Now, we can adjust that one. We're going to get to a point here now where the feet are off the ground. So we'll go forward. Now that heel is colliding with the workspace line, so we'll come down like so, come up a little bit like that, advance forward, put the foot so it's touching the workspace line. Same with this pose and that one. Of course, that one. And we just kind of keep going along here. That one looks good. Maybe just a little bit. And that one can go down. And basically, again, as you can see, as we continue to do this, you'll get a better feel for it. Then we have that cycle where the feet are in the air and then we come back down. So now let's take a look again. We can create a cycle for all those keyframes, holding in your mouse, highlighting, right-clicking cycle, choosing a value of 2, and then we can play this out. And this is looking pretty good. There's a little bit of a bounce going on, which is what we want, but you can see there's kind of a jerk going on, and what we've discovered is, let's first turn off the cycle here. We can just highlight those frames and choose smooth, is we'll go to frame 3, and while the foot should be on the ground here technically, what we can do is actually move it up, and we can do the same then for the mirrored frame basically at the end of the cycle here. So we'll click on those guides, and with the translate bone tool, we're going to nudge him up on frame 3, and the same for frame 15. Again, just nudge him up a little bit like so. And it just works out this way. It just looks better. We can then reapply that cycle, and then we can turn the bones off the workspace and just look here, and you can see now it looks better. It looks smoother. It doesn't have such a jerky look to it. And those are just little tricks that you'll discover as you kind of advance forward with your learning here. So we'll turn the smooth option back on, and we can go through here and look to see what else we can do. We'll turn the bones back on. And if we take the Scale Bones tool and click on the bottom torso bone at frame 3, and we just move it down a little bit, we're going to do some stretching and squashing here to just give it some bounce. It's just one of the principles of animation. It's always kind of good to do. Just kind of gives it that extra pop to it whenever you do movement. So we'll go to about frame 9, and we'll hit reset. That'll create a keyframe, and then we'll move it up a bit. So we'll do the stretch then at that point. So we're squashing and then stretching. And then we can then advance forward to about frame 15, and we will just copy that first squash keyframe and then paste it. So now we can do the same then for the stretching keyframe. We can just take that one, and we will then place it at frame 21. So paste it in, and again, just Control-C and Control-V to do all that. Now we can add some in-betweens for this as well. So we'll come to about frame, let's see here, 11, and then we will just take that Scale Bone tool and hit reset to make sure it's reset, and make sure that the bone is selected when you do this as well, that torso bone. And we'll go to frame 13 and do the same as well for that. And then go to frame 25 and then reset it. Of course, this will allow us to do a looping animation. That's pretty seamless then. And we can turn the guides off, put that cycle back on, and then play this out and see how it looks. And you can see now that things are looking pretty good. So from here then, you could move the layer with the transform layer tool and have him run around. As I said, with our walking tutorial that we recently put up, you could watch that and see how we did it there. The technique would be similar. And that's basically how you would create a running animation in Anime Studio. Of course, one of many techniques you could use, but I believe this is a pretty sound technique, and you can probably apply it to most designs or character creations. Again, it will just require practice, and don't get frustrated, and make sure you check out that chart that we are providing on our website so that you can get a better idea of just how you could manipulate and create this animation on your own. Anyway, this has been a joint Incredible tutorial. My name is Chad Troftgruben. I have provided the narration. Jim Mills recorded the tutorial. And as always, he did a fantastic job. If you would like more Incredible tutorials, you can, of course, subscribe to our channel or visit IncredibleTutorials.com. We are also on Google+, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. Thanks for watching, guys, and we will see you next time.